up, everybody, and welcome to Baz on Blades. My name is Baz, and I talk about blades, and today we've got the Kershaw Endgame on the table. The Kershaw Endgame Model 2095. It's a fairly new flipper folder model from Kershaw, and this is going to be a fairly positive review. There will be a couple of things that we are going to take a look at later in the review, but overall very positive. And I want to give a shout out to Justin at White Mountain Knives, who has pretty much become my retailer supplier of choice. I don't think I'm buying from anybody else right now except White Mountain Knives. Justin has I've never spoken to this cat before, not even on the phone, but the way it's so easy to do business through his website, and everything's always right. He offers the discount codes. He's just got a business set up to help knife enthusiasts spend their money, and that's what we all like to do. So, speaking of the price on the Kershaw Endgame, pretty much everywhere is going to be about $65. You figure in the 10% discount at White Mountain Knives, and I was out the door shipped for $58.45 on this. While not the most competitive price for what you get, I still think that it's a decent price if you like this design. The quality of the knife is good. I'll tell you that up front. So it's going to come down to if you want to spend that kind of money on this design or not. All right, let's bring in the packaging. Standard Kershaw packaging here. Endgame Model 2095. We will knock out the specs. Your blade length is 3 1/8 of an inch. That's 8 centimeters. Your blade stock thickness, 118 thousandths of an inch, or about 3 millimeters. Blade width, 1 inch, or 26 millimeters. Your handle length, 4 1/4 inches, or slightly less than 11 centimeters. Handle thickness, slimmer than normal, 430 thousandths of an inch, or 11 millimeters. Handle width at the widest, about 1 inch, or 26 millimeters. Closed width, what you're going to see in your pocket, 1.3 inches, or about 33 millimeters. Overall length, slightly less than 7.5 inches, or 19 centimeters. Stock pin diameter, the same as the blade stock thickness, 118 thousandths of an inch, 3 millimeters. Behind the edge thickness, right at that 19/20 thousandths of an inch, or about 0.5 millimeter range. Handle to blade ratio, 0.73, very good. And your weight, 3.88 ounces, or 110 grams. Guys, I'm going to go ahead and apologize for the problems with glare on this blade. It is just not getting along with my lighting at all, and I've got the lights turned down as low as I can go with so you guys can still see details. Let's talk about material here. D2 for your blade steel. I know everybody is so tired of D2. It's everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. Your wife had an affair with D2 and left you at home with the children to run off with D2, and I know that's pretty upsetting, but you know what? Just get over it. D2's out there. He's going to steal your woman if he can. What you get out of D2, and it will typically be rock weld in the 59 to 62 range. What you're going to get at that range is D2 edge performance, pretty decent. Its forte is a toothy, aggressive cutting edge because of a lot of big chromium carbides along the edge in that steel. That toothy, aggressive cutting edge, it lasts pretty well. I love that out of D2. Not the best thing if you want to do like a super polished razor edge. It'll take that, but it won't hold it forever. But what it leaves behind that toothiness is super aggressive. and it just cuts and cuts and cuts and cuts, and you just strop it back, and it just cuts and cuts and cuts, and you just keep stropping it until it won't strop back, and then it's time to sharpen. And that's the fun part with D2, re-sharpening. It's not that bad, but it's not a super soft, crappy steel either. So impact resistance, pretty decent with D2. Don't be chopping anything with it. It can be a little chippy along the edge, but in a knife like this, I don't think that's going to be an issue. Corrosion resistance, don't listen to the nightmares about D2. It's damn near stainless. It only misses qualifying as stainless by 1.5% of chromium. Just keep it wiped off. Use a little bit of a rust inhibitor on it, which is whether it's Tough Glide like what I use or mineral oil. It doesn't matter. Just a little bit of care is all D2 needs. And I do not recommend it for those living in coastal areas because, again, there's so much salt even in the air living along salt water. Materials in the handle, stainless frame lock, and it looks complicated, but it feels the same as all other Kershaw's Chinese-made stainless frame locks. They all tend to feel the same to me. Small parts wise, the black here is molded Zytel. It's a fiber reinforced thermoplastic. Your backspacer, that is a floating backspacer sort of design, is also molded from Zytel. These bronzy parts are PVD coated stainless steel. And then, of course, you've just got stainless small parts. T6 screws everywhere. T8 for the pivot. Bent stainless fold-over pocket clip. Pretty decent. Now, I don't like pocket clips. It just, the tip flares up and it just goes up. But this handle is thin. The standard has become for handle thickness, 1/2 inch. But this one at 430 thousandths, you're nearly 1/10 less than that 1/2 inch. So the pocket clip becomes, the impact of that tip is less consequential with that thinner handle. I think that it works out pretty well. Flush screws, plenty of room. The overall design, very good, and it works very well in the pocket. The knife being thin and not too wide, it's a fairly easy carry in the pocket. So, material-wise, there you go. Fit and finish. I can't really find anything wrong with the fit and finish in this knife. As far as what you typically see out of Kershaw's Chinese stainless frame locks, we do have a slightly more complex build, and they have kept the fit and finish very good. We'll start in the handle, as it's got all the little neat little crap added to it. Basically what you are looking at is, you can see how it's sandwiched together here. On the show side, you have a stainless overlay over a stainless liner. And this overlay is machined in a way to where the recesses are the parts that accept all the added on stuff. So this is what you're looking at here as far as the look of it goes. It's a fairly flat, but still it has a nice radiused edge to it. It's a comfortable handle, and everything fits together tightly. It gives it a much more complex look, and it's really not that complex. I think that the design language is very modern and attractive, and the fit and finish, as you can see here, we're getting very close up. The bead blast on the stainless frame is pretty much the same as all other Kershaw stainless frames. They've got this down to a science in whatever production facility or facilities that they are using to produce these OEM facilities. So fit and finish there, I've no issues at all in the handle. Fit and finish on the blade, it is a subdued tumbled finish. And it's very well done. It's even all over. No issues there. Grinds are even and symmetrical. The edge grind is even on each side. The only issue that I found on the blade is the back side, the tip is rolled. You can see up here at the tip where it's rolled a little bit. Look at the difference in the grind on this side. It's very defined at the tip. And then on this side, you can see that roll. That will sharpen out the first time I sharpen this. And for those of you that use fixed angle sharpeners like a KME like I do, or a Lansky or Wicked Edge or whatever, this type of edge profile is one of the easiest to set up, the easiest to sharpen. It takes a lot of the headaches out. It's going to be a joy to resharpen. And look at that sharpening choil there. You can see where the plunge actually rolls into the flat plane of the edge. If you get any rise here at the end, it's going to be very, very little. That's a damn near perfect sharpening choil, and no wasted space for a forward finger choil. Jeez. You don't have to put a forward finger choil on every damn knife that you make. I'm not naming the brands that I'm talking about, but good Lord, the knives you could have sold me if they actually had full cutting edges. So, fit and finish everywhere is pretty decent. We're going to go into action. And this is an area where this knife sort of falls apart. But don't get me wrong, the action is pretty good. It is on KVT. It is a single row stainless bearings. I have disassembled this knife and will be doing a disassembly video to take care of the one issue with this knife. The bearings in this are the absolute smallest bearings I've ever seen in my life. They are like super duper small. they're freaking small, guys. I'm going to show you in the disassembly, but they are super duper small. The detent is really good on this knife. I mean, just pulling it out of the detent and letting it drop, yeah, it's definitely, there's plenty of detent there to store kinetic energy to be released when it breaks out of the detent. That's why you get the snappy flipping action. Geometry on the flipper tab to center point of the pivot, and detent strength really set up to make the action very good on this. The one negative thing that I will say is the sensation of opening and closing it is very gritty. It felt like it had a bunch of manufacturing crap in the pivot. But when I take the pressure off the lock bar and I'm just rolling on the bearings on the pivot, I don't feel that. I don't feel it at all. So that made me think that I had a drag on the detent ball, because this stainless frame lock, the tension on this lock bar, even though there is a relief here, is still, it's pretty high. There are going to be people that complain about the effort it takes to disengage the lock bar, although that's a first world sort of complaint in my book. That sensation went away. So I thought maybe I had a dry detent, something in the detent path from manufacturing, something. So I oiled the detent, and it did. The friction was reduced on the detent, but the sensation was still there. So I did disassemble this knife. And I'm not going to include a disassembly here because we are actually going to work on this knife when I do the disassembly. For time restraints, it is going to have to be another video, which I will post soon. But I think the issue is fixable. It is not a death nail sort of issue. It's not going to get worse. It's just a feeling, guys. The action is I mean, for a KVT Chinese-made Kershaw, the action it's actually pretty damn good. The flipping action is excellent. Like I said, everything about the way the flipping action is set up as far as a engineering standpoint is super duper. And, you know, it's on bearings and all of that jazz. And it's, look at that centering, guys. It's centered. There's manufacturers that make knives that cost 4 or 5 times this, that are American-made knives, that they cannot get the centering right at all, ever. And this, you know, this knife was $58, Chinese-made Kershaw, and you know what? Everything is really good about it. Now, the reason I am not making a big issue about the problem here is when I opened it up and looked at it, it did not look like a fit and finish issue. It looked like an assembly issue. So I will go into detail about that, but up front, I'm saying still, as far as the fit and finish and then the action of this, other than that little bit of grittiness, which I think we will fix in the next video, everything is excellent. It is excellent. You know what? I like this little knife. I like this little knife quite a bit. I initially thought that I might use it as a giveaway, a Christmas present, or maybe do a giveaway on the channel or something like that. But I think I'm going to actually keep it to use as an example down in the budget realm of knives. All right, let's swing on into ergos and utility use. Ergos, we're going to take a look at the handle here. It is very stylized, admittingly, but look at the handle profile. Okay, the profile, the shape of the handle around the outside. It is pretty doggone open right in here. Even though we're sort of shelved and a drop off to drop the butt end down, it does have more of that almost semi-pistol grippy drop down butt type of modern build that I like so much because the human hand is not straight. Any tool that's got a super duper straight handle, it fits like it's super duper straight. Okay, your hand is not straight, and that works great in some tools. But in knives, I like a little bit of a curvature, a little bit of an attempt to fit that handle to the shape of my hand, rather than my hand having to adapt to the shape of the handle. So in that sense, it's not as bad as it looks like it would be, guys. It's actually a pretty good feeling knife. Now, keep in mind, we're not talking about a really big knife. Less than 7.5 inches overall. The handle length, you're looking at 4.25 inches. Okay, my hands are medium large. All right, I have large hand volume here and then medium length fingers. But other than that, my hand's pretty much a large. And you can see what my grip is. You can see how everything falling up here in the choil area, falling back here in the handle area, falling back here on the butt end. My thumb, it goes naturally right to the pad on the spine of the blade, where the jimping is. The jimping is utilitarian. It's not the best I've felt, but it is gripping. You can see right here, your flesh does go down in that jimping. I wish the recesses were just a little bit bigger, but as far as it's finished out, it is useful. So ergonomically, I think it works real well, and extra large hands might find it a little short overall, and probably are going to find it a little narrow, or not narrow, but thin. And it is narrow too overall. The width of the handle is fairly narrow. The widest point at 1 inch up here at the pivot. So the rest of it is fairly narrow, and it's thin. That's a pretty trim handle design. It's easy to get your hand around. It doesn't, usually when they're thin, they might feel a little flat, okay, flat and board-like. But because it's a narrow, and it does have the work done along the edge here to radius it on both sides, it does give it sort of a 3D machined sort of feeling, and it doesn't feel too thin or too narrow in my hands. It does feel, you pick it up and you're like, okay, that's a little thinner than normal, but it's not, you're not thinking, that's too thin. You're just thinking, it's a little thinner than normal. Okay. And that's the way this design, as far as the handle, comes across to me. Love or hate the styling, I honestly, I think the handle on this is pretty much a win for this design. Now, the blade, we've got this sort of sheep's footy, reverse tanto-y, modern, I don't even know. A lot of these sort of modern drop point sheep's footy edge profile blades, what they really are is modified spear points. Look at this. It's basically a spear point where one side is stylized, and then it has a hollow grind, a single sided bevel, and sort of a it's just sort of spear pointy shaped, but with a grind from a sheep's foot and a tip from a reverse tanto, and it's just these newer blades are sort of a mishmash of styling and profiling, and it's hard to just place a name on it. It's interesting. I like the faceted look that the spine of the blade has here. I mean, it's got an interesting grind. It's got an interesting grind on it. I'm not being able to find my words today. 100% belly from tip to termination of the edge, fairly thin behind the edge, a nice subtle hollow grind here. That may be a flat grind. It's very, very subtle. Let's get down in there and look at that. That is a flat grind, guys. I'm sorry. I think I initially said it was a flat grind and then started saying hollow grind. I apologize for that. It is a flat grind. Yeah. Okay. But as far as utilitarian use of the blade, it's all in, a serviceable stabby tip, continuous belly from tip to termination of the edge. It's very slicey. I have used it quite a bit, guys. I don't have any issue as far as the blade profile goes. I got a lot of comments from the unboxing of this. People didn't like the style, and I can see that. Then you may think it's sort of a cheap gas station truck stoppy looking knife, even though in my opinion it really doesn't have the cheapness of that. It's just a style and it's sort of modern, and sort of maybe overcomplicated for this type of knife. I don't know. It's up to the individual person. But the profiles of both the blade and the handle are actually very good. The decision to go with a narrower profile with a thinner handle design keeps it from feeling really flat and too thin. And it just, I don't know, guys. There's a lot of good decisions made in this that maybe I would not have thought about myself. And that's good. It keeps me from falling into the mindset of what Baz on Blades thinks is the only way to go. I try not to have that mindset, although it is human nature in different degrees with different people. So, material-wise, we're good. Fit and finish, we're good. Action, we're good. There is a little issue going on in the pivot with the bearings. We're going to get into that in another video. Not a big deal, guys. The action is still fantastic on this. And then the ergos and utility are actually very good, even though it looks like it may not be. Very good in that respect. Overall, I'm very positive about this knife, except for one thing. And it's sort of the elephant in the room. And I don't like to do this a lot on my channel, directly comparing brands and saying one is better than the other. But I think we need to say some things right here. Kershaw has very little of their product made in the United States anymore. And I think that was an attempt by Kai Cutlery, who owns Kershaw and who also owns Zero Tolerance, to sort of differentiate between those brands. To keep Zero Tolerance the premium brand, Kershaw used to do much more premium knives, American-made knives, and they don't do them anymore at all. Kershaw has sort of fallen into our knives are made in China, but they don't really compete with the major Chinese brands. And I'm going to bring one of those out here right now, and that is the Penguin from Bestech. And I'm going to tell you that even though everything about this is fine and in line with what you would expect from Kershaw and a great design, everything about this knife is finitely better. Everything. And this knife cost $10 less than the Kershaw. The Bestech Penguin, also in D2 for your blade steel, also on bearings. Also has, if you've seen my video of this and where I took it apart and showed you how it was assembled, complex assembly, but everything is done at a higher level. What's smooth on this knife is extra smooth on this knife. What's bead blast on this knife is satin on this knife. What's satin or stone washed or whatever on this knife is taken up and polished on this knife. Everything is just done to a finite level higher, tighter, more refined. I mean, the action on this knife is like butter. It's like butter. That knife is like butter, guys. The action on this knife, not like butter. And it's $10 more than that Bestech. And I think that's where Kershaw is losing me. I don't buy many Kershaw knives anymore, even to review. Because I'm only buying knives that I'm interested in. I saw this design and I was like, that actually looks pretty cool. I'm going to get that knife. I mean, when it was introduced, when it was pre-introduced, what was it? Was it a SHOT Show? It was one of the shows. It was SHOT Show or Blade Show, Blade West, something. It was previewed in, and when I saw the videos that everybody did from the show, I thought that's the Kershaw I'm going to buy this year to review. And I may be a little late to the game on this knife, but it's still fairly new. So the design is what got me in. The fit and finish is good. The action is good. It's just not the same as this, or a Civivi knife, or a Tuya knife, or a Kansept knife. Those dedicated Chinese companies that are doing the high-end budget arena, they have refined it to such a point that this Chinese-made Kershaw, even though the design is very good and the execution is good, it's just not competitive at the price point. There's still that little in there you're paying for the Kershaw name that they've got to take into account, I'm assuming, and you lose that. I don't know, guys. I don't know if I'm pleased with that. That will have to be up to you. So, overall, I'm very positive on this knife. I have enjoyed carrying it. I've enjoyed using it. It's actually been a joy to carry. And we will do another video and get into the grittiness on this, but overall, pretty positive. Just decide for yourself if it's going to be worth that price. As always, thank you very much for taking the time to watch one of my videos. God bless all of you, and we will talk to you again.